Well, good morning. Well, it's morning here, 10 a.m. on the West Coast. And yeah, this is The Art of Ideas with Sam Foote. Anyway, this is kind of the first time I've ever tried to stream in the morning, which is pretty interesting. I had the thought last week that because I have a day job, most of us have a day job, that I'm usually always making the excuse that I'm too tired to shoot a video. And it really doesn't matter what your job is. We can all use that excuse. My job is lifting a lot of heavy stuff and using my brain all day. Um, and Time is fleeting. And if you don't make the time to do the things you care about, you'll never find the time to do it. So here we are, first thing in the morning. I have to go to work. I have to be at work in 1 hour. So we're gonna do a short little stream. And this is what I do. I find all the moments in the day that I can to get shit done for myself. If you care about something, you will. You'll have to find out. How to jump into it when you feel inspired to do it. And yeah, just opening my thinner container here. My brushes are always ready. I just pull back the plastic. It's my little trick to keep my paint wet. And in fact, last night I got off of work and I worked on this guy for a few hours off and on. Generally, unless I'm in front of the camera or I'm just in a really dedicated state with what I'm doing, like I'm very in the zone, as I guess you could say, very in the zone, then I tend to work sporadically, through the day. Um, Hop up, work for however long I feel inspired to work, sit down, hang out, do something else, work on my website, play some games, watch Star Trek, whatever. And then, you know, uh, I'll look up and I'll see something that's totally screwed up and I'll hop right back up and get right back into it. And I'll do that all day long until from the moment I wake up to the time I go to sleep. So often when I wake up, my I get inspired. I talk about this a lot, but I keep my easel at the foot of my bed so that every time I wake up, I see it with fresh eyes. And I don't really have a goal right now. So I'll tell you, I've been working on this painting for the last two streams, I believe. And well, actually, I've been working on this painting for months. But my point is that I've done two prior streams on this piece, and I constantly mess with this guy, like constantly. Like I might screw with it a few times a day, and in fact, I've been working on this thing for like the last few weeks solid, and it's never dried. I have wet everywhere, and I just keep moving around, letting one area kind of dry a little bit, set up a little bit, and then I'll say fuck it and just jump right back into it. And that's what we're gonna do right now. I This is still pretty tacky. In a lot of the places I think I'm going to work right now, but it doesn't matter. I don't care. We're just going to make it happen. And I will say that I have, up until the last 2 days, I think, worked purely in using odorless mineral spirits on this guy as my medium to thin my oil paint. I haven't been using any medium. And that was great for the first few sessions, but I took that way too far. I was having way too much fun with it, and I ended up kind of screwing myself because I realized that it was starting to it was starting to look so flat with every layer, because every layer that I was putting on, just using the thinner, my darks would just sink in more and more and more, and they kept looking flatter and flatter, and they had no depth to them. And so I decided to break down, and I'll show you the stuff. A lot of you oil painters out there probably know all about this, or Liquin. They're very comparable. I've used both, and I like both. I might like the Neo Megalip a little more just because I like the stink of it. It makes me feel like I'm an oil painter, as it gives me cancer. Anyway, just kidding. But this is Neo Meglip, or however you want to pronounce it. But basically, as I recall, I haven't read about this stuff in a long time, but I first got interested in this stuff because it was Gamblin's interpretation, this company, Gamblin. artist colors, oil colors. It was their idea or reverse engineering of the master mediums, or a generalization of the master mediums used during the Renaissance, as I recall. So I honestly, I think it's wonderful stuff. I've talked about this before, but I've messed with hundreds of mediums because I've made a lot of my own. I used to take canvases about roughly this size, and I would just put a mid-tone on them, and then I would go around and I would get all the raw components. I have all these old books about artist mediums from the Renaissance. How to Paint Like the Old Masters is one of the books I have, and it breaks down several artist mediums. And I used to make these all the time and then refine them and mess with them, and I yeah, I've made countless variations. So but this is all the work done for me. I don't have to screw around, and I quite love this stuff. The only thing I might say is it looks pretty thin, but um, I like it a little thinner than that. So I probably put 20%, 30% OMS in this McLip to thin it down a little bit more, show a little bit more of the striations in my brush, and also to cut down on the sheen a little bit, you know. Um, but this stuff has, even on my palette here, it has a very nice buttery drag to it. It's pretty wonderful. It feels kind of like honey, um, and it dries up relatively. It firms up, I would say. I wouldn't say it dries fast because it still takes 5, 6, 7 days for this stuff to really dry. But um, it sets up quick. So what that means, it gets tight quick. It makes it easier to manipulate your paint quickly. And so yeah, I'm just trying to find the time. I've been way too burnt out to make videos like after work, and it really bums me out. Sometimes I find the motivation and the energy, but yeah, I mean, my whole motivation really is to try to make as many videos as possible, because not only uh, to show people my work and to get it out in front of people, but also because it makes me actually work more. You know, I get a lot more done, especially when the camera's in front of me. So I'm just gonna pick around. I actually had no real goal for this other than to talk about the meaning of and value of time, and finding it. You know, it's easy to come home and just want to lay down and screw off. And I think we all do that plenty. But if you care about something, you have to. And it wasn't easy for me. I woke up a bit early this morning, and I've been thinking about this for like the last week and a half. It just occurred to me because I often pop up in the morning, rub the sand on my eyes, and then screw around for a while, before I go to work. It's just a nice, relaxing thing. The only negative side aspect to it really is that I'll get into the zone, and right by the time I get into the zone, I have to throw my shoes on and leave. But today, and I figured, what the hell, might as well just jump into it. I was up early. I wasn't particularly motivated to do this. I forced myself to do it, and that's my point. It's like forcing yourself to have to go to your day job. I mean, either you do it or you lose your job, and then you wonder how you're going to pay for your paint. So, it's the same thing with this. If you care about it, you'll just force yourself to have to, like, put yourself into the right mentality to do it. I think it was, God, I hope I'm not murdering his name because I say it wrong all the time, even though I'm a huge fan of his work, but I think it's Chuck Close. He was like a big photorealist during, like, I think the 70s and 80s, and then he kind of, I forget what his disability is, I'm sorry, but he's a disabled man. He's relegated to a wheelchair, and he has very limited mobility. And then he got into doing more abstract art, which is still pretty. Almost any oil painter will know who he is. But look him up, Chuck Close. But he said something to the effect of, and I'm paraphrasing here, but it inspired me. But he says something to the effect of something like an amateur paints when they feel like it, a professional wakes up, puts their pants on, and gets to work. Something to the effect of that. He's like, you gotta treat it like a job sometimes. And it's funny. Your brain will flip. You just have to do it for about 20 minutes, and then you'll be in art mode, and it'll be hard to stop after that. And I've been having a real hard time finding motivation lately to do the things I really love to do, like paint for you guys and paint for myself. And I really am excited to start getting into some other projects. And I love this painting. This is honestly, this is one of my favorite paintings I've worked. But I say that it's one of my favorite paintings I've worked on in a while. But it's funny, I always feel that way. Like it's always a good feeling when you feel like you're always working on your best work, or at least what you care about working on at that time. So that's where I like to be, and it doesn't matter what aesthetic I'm going for. And yes, this is very aesthetical, but it's also very philosophical to me. And as the I probably got a couple more months on this painting to go still, which sounds crazy, but it's just the way I work. I just, like I say, keep a lot of paintings going at once. I mean, just for me to let this painting dry and then put another layer on it, I'd have to wait a couple weeks. Because I spoke about in my last video, but I would really like to, at some point, maybe oil this out and smooth out a couple areas just here and there to create more atmosphere. Now, I'm really trying to learn to use my brushes to get a lot more striation and let my brushes work for me, instead of sitting here picking out every little leaf and in detail on a tree, which ends up, honestly, unless you're a real master at it, you end up making it look kind of artificial anyway by working that way. So I'm loosey goosey. Like, I mean, this is a technical whatever piece, but I'm loosey goosey with everything I've been doing lately, and it's kind of a nice change of pace. I used to choke up and sit here and I still will on this painting at certain points, and I do every once in a while. I'll go in and maybe refine like the pupils on the eyes or whatever, but and I will at the end come in and pick out detail here and there where people are going to be looking for it. But for the most part, I'm just learning to loosen up and have a lot more fun. And yeah, I could say I'm enjoying working more and more and more. The older you get, it takes a long time to teach yourself patience, and I think some people are born with it, but patience is like a superpower, and it's a muscle. You train it. Trying to break some edges. Um, it might look like I'm doing nonsensical crap, but I assure you, I'm changing the shape of that. So, like, one thing I would like to talk about actually is that I radically, and I say this in every video, and I will continue to say it in every video, but you can't be afraid of change. Art is change. Every brushstroke, you have to look at it as in flux, all these little brush strokes are just friends holding hands until eventually they all agree with each other and the conversation resolves itself. Because I will go over this as many times, brushstrokes, hundreds of times over and over each other, and like I said, this is what, middle of March, yeah, March 16th, 17th today, and I started this last February sometime, and it's not like I work on this every day or something. No, that's ridiculous. I have all kinds of paintings going. It's just like this might get put in the closet for, weeks on end or a month, while I let it dry and think about itself, Then I'll pull it out, with fresh eyes and stare at it and go, wow, that's really great, or that's really terrible. And it's usually a good mixture of both, There'll be certain things I like and certain things I don't like. But so last night, and I started this conversation a minute ago and got sidetracked. Squirrel. The road was bugging me a little bit. It was choking down too much. I had it encroaching in here, and it was cutting across him, and it made this character. The intention was to make this like disembodied head look like it's floating down a road or a river or whatever, but like basically a path. I have this thing about paths. Paths leading to somewhere, and while you're on that path and the journey and all that, it's a conversation topic that'll go on for the rest of our lives. But it's basically always like there's this journey going on, and wow, I got a little lighter than I expected. Anyway, that's fine though. Who cares? I want this light to hit in here a little bit more anyway. But I decided to change the road quite a bit last night. I changed a lot of angles. I wiped out a lot of detail, and I don't care. if you need to pick up a sledgehammer every once in a while to fix something, I use that. I'm being silly. I just mean, if you have to get radical with something to make it better, and it doesn't matter. I've gotten over like the fact that yes, it's hard to find the time, and it seems like a waste of a lot of time, just correcting and fixing stuff. But as Picasso said, a painting's never finished, or it can never be finished. Something to that effect. It can only be abandoned. Um, and I kind of believe that to some extent. You know, uh, it's just done when it stops bugging you. And when the story's been told, and you feel the story is effective. And whatever that story is. Sometimes that story is very simple and it's purely aesthetical, as I like to say, and sometimes it's more philosophical and aesthetical as well. Um, let's see what our time is. Well, only a quarter after. I have to watch that clock. I literally have 45 minutes before I have to walk in the door at work, so luckily I only work 10 minutes away, but um, yeah. I will work comfortably up to the second. I have to grab the briefcase and run out the door, which is funny because actually I do have a briefcase in my truck. Funny enough, um, but it's an art briefcase. It's what I do on my lunch breaks, and this is what I'm talking about with finding time. I don't always feel inspired on my lunch breaks to work or draw or paint, but I'll tell you what, I carry, this isn't the good one. I have the art bin. Clipboard's much nicer, but I have all kinds of clipboards. So I've got these in my truck. You could store paper, pencils, whatever in them. And I got a briefcase with all my paint. And then I've got 2 art bags. One is filled with watercolor stuff. The other one has more oil painting, acrylic stuff. I always keep an art kit on me, and if at lunch I'm feeling inspired or not inspired, or I'm just listening to music and I want to doodle around, which I generally use like Bics and some copy paper on one of those clipboards. That's my usual favorite thing in the universe to use. That's what I'll do. I do it all the time. Been drawing the last couple days on my lunch breaks. I usually get about an hour for lunch, and so it gives me plenty of time to relax and come up with other ideas for paintings I want to do for you guys and for myself. And I come up with new ideas constantly. But unless you take the time to come up with new ideas, it'll never happen. Um, and sometimes, they'll just be inspired by your environment. And that happens to me all the time. People often inspire me. Nature inspires me. And sometimes those two themes meet up in what I'm working on, and they often do, or sometimes they're separate. In the sense that I like doing just pure landscape painting sometimes to put humanity to rest. I mean, the thinking about people. Sometimes I just want to take a vacation and go for a walk in the mountains and paint some sea and paint some mountains. It's my favorite subject matter, really, and that and flowers and whatever, find all the beauty in the world and try to appreciate it. Sometimes people make that difficult. So yeah, I'm just bouncing around doing some detail. I'm trying to not be afraid to just wreck something if it doesn't make me happy. I'm just kind of trying to create some variation in where the light's hitting, where the cast shadows from the grass are going to be, and then I'll come back and I'm going to do some more detail. Like I'll come in here and detail this much more and do something with this road texture. I still don't know if it's going to be. It started off as a paved road, and in fact, I had all the requisite lines and stuff, dividers and things of that nature. But I wiped it out, and I'll probably repaint it. I actually quite liked it. But I needed to wipe it out for any number of reasons. For example, I had a guy right here, which I'm going to put back. I might move him. He might be over here. I might put a few different characters, and they're going to be dragging these characters or being chased by them. I haven't decided, but I think the main character is going to be dragging this character. Like the idea of being constantly pursued by death and time. And it's kind of the theme of this piece is evolution and time and philosophy and how human beings perceive their own mortality. It's kind of and their own future and where they're going and what we're evolving towards. How we start off well, it's a complicated subject. I'll get into it later. I have to be a little bit more awake before I start philosophizing too much. But we're just philosophizing right now in paint. And this is the language I like the most. This way I don't have to explain everything to you fuckheads. If people want to know what my painting means, then why would I have painted it in the first place? I mean, yeah, sure, I can explain it, but I try and let the brush do most of the explaining for me. It's more fun that way. Sorry, getting a little sip of water. And yeah, no, this medium, I'm really, I put it off way too long. I should have done this months ago. Because these sinking issues have been driving me fucking nuts. Like, literally, they have. But I've been having so much fun with how loosey-goosey working with the thinner was. And it was dumb because I should have just done this. This has more drag to it, but yeah, I can still get all the same striation with it just as easily, and I don't get the sinking issues with this. In fact, I just started using my brush with this little 1/2 incher and like rubbing this medium all over these darks, and it like rescued them. It sucked all the flatness out of them, and it really brought the contrast back to this image. And I don't really know how much that's coming across. My last couple streams were pre this stage, so they were a lot more sunk in. The only problem when I start messing with mediums is it makes the surface a lot more reflective. And I have to be mindful of that, you know. That's one of the reasons I was using just thinner in the first place, was I was trying to minimize reflection. But it's a delicate balance, you know. I try to, as much as I can, get a satin finish to my work, and that's not always reliable or easy to do. No matter what medium you're using or how you're working, sometimes things just don't work out that way, especially if you're just building up layers and layers and layers, because the paint itself is just full of oil. So, you know, you're putting oil on top of oil on top of oil, and sometimes that just builds up and can cause some issues. I've had it happen plenty of times, especially if you're doing oil out layers. So if you're letting each layer dry or whatnot, and then you come back later and you want to work wet and wet, let's say, because working wet and wet's kind of nice. I like working wet and wet. I just don't do it a huge amount anymore. But you know, as I alluded to earlier, I do want to do a wet and wet session on this. I'm just waiting for the right time to pounce on that. And this painting will have to be very dry before that can happen. So I'll lift any of this pre-existing paint off. Now that I'm using medium, it'll stick a lot better. If you're using just thinner as your medium, one problem, and I started to have this problem a lot, that's another reason I went to medium, is that your paint becomes like butterfly wings. If you even breathe on it wrong, it'll lift right off the surface because you've weakened the molecular bonds between your paint and the canvas. And so, yeah, I mean, and that's a big problem when you're using, for example, and I've talked about this before, but if you're using water as a medium with acrylic, same story. If your surface isn't really absorbent, your paint will flake off, or your brush will lift off previous layers, or it will dig into those previous layers with whatever color you have, and you'll start mixing mud, you know. So yeah, so all kinds of things to worry about. Now I have messed around with these guys so much, and like the more I've worked on them, the less I like them. So, you know, at some point, you know, and I keep doing this, and this is a good way to go, you know. And it will be fine. I'm not worried about it. A little momentarily frustrated by it, but I'm not worried about it. So I'm cleaning my brush, and here's one thing I want to do really quick. Let's see what our time is. All right, I'll cut it in like 15 minutes. I don't want to overthink this too much. Like I talked about this before, but the idea of these characters is kind of like just kind of a rough idea of the idea of not even literally, but like kind of philosophically, like Cerebus or something like that, like the hounds of hell, basically, you know, the servants of death, basically chasing you and driving you into fear. And so, like, yeah, but you have to just get loose. Like, I'm just building up a lot of medium right now. I should probably thin this out a little bit more. Feels like my medium's getting a little too thick, but I don't have much left, and I don't want to mess with it too much. I'm going right to work here in a minute. So, you know, you have to sometimes just get really brave and not care that you're fucking it up. You know, it's okay. I've already done this like 20 times. I've changed this so many times, and I'm still not happy with it. I'm not even close to happy with it. So, like, first off, my forms are in the wrong spots sometimes. I don't know. Maybe I'll just get rid of the eyes and stuff right now. Like, they're only lightly indicated anyway. And I'm not liking these shapes. So I changed this character too quite a bit when I changed the road, because this character looked like he was floating in the grass over here, and I wanted him to look like he was more on the road and more seated on the road. And now I was looking at this a little earlier. I want to bring his jaw, the back of his jaw down more, so he even looks more seated. And then that will make this character look like it's more in front of this larger character. So there's that change, and you know, just have fun, be loose. Let your brush work for you. It's something I've learned through time. I'm constantly learning, just like everybody who does anything. Every single time I paint, I always say it's an experiment, you know. This is an experiment happening in front of you. I never know what's going to happen. I hope it's going to be cool. It could be frustrating. It might get totally freaking wiped out the next time we paint it. You never know. But I like to work from my mind, generally. If I need a little reference here and there every once in a while, I might use it, but that's pretty rare. More and more, I think I'm going to start incorporating reference into my work. I did that on my last nude, loosely. You know, I'm more drawing from the colors and some of the composition in the piece of the landscape photo I found. I just found a photo online, and I also like take a huge amount of photos myself. Like, you know, I live in a very beautiful area. Rena's very beautiful. We have interesting weather, and we're also famous here in Nevada for having amazing sunsets, which is very, very true. Um, so you'll see me taking lots and lots and lots of photographs. I do it all the time, and I like to go out and it's about that time. I should have been doing it more this year, but it's about that time to go out and start painting in the field a little bit. You know, go outside, take this sucker. I think I'm gonna buy another one of these field easels. If anybody's interested in what it is, I'll let you know. But this thing is pretty wonderful. If I had one complaint, I would say the build quality of it could be improved, but I haven't had a break on me yet. Cross my fingers. It's just that I can tell it will. The plastics just feel kind of Fisher pricey, but the easel itself, functionally and design wise, is just wow. Like it truly is pretty astounding. And coming from a guy who loves to like come up with ideas for like easels and stuff all the time, um, yeah, whoever came up with the ideas for this, it was a great idea. They did a really good job on it. So it's not an advertisement. I haven't even told you the name of it. If anybody wants to know, ask in the comments. I'll let you know. I forget what it's called. Just got off Amazon. But yeah, the whole kit, it was like $150. Has a rock bag on the bottom so you can weight it down when you're in the field. And I've had this thing out in like 50 mph wind before. I just totally screwed the pooch here. I just threw like some totally screwed up color in the background. I totally didn't mean to do, but that's okay. I don't care. That's what I'm saying. Like, you know, see, look how easy that was to fix. Big deal. Go back in there and fix it. No biggie. sometimes I make things worse. It's not even a question of like maybe. It's a question of definitely. I do make things worse sometimes. Sometimes you're just not in the right headspace to paint, even if you do, you know, sit here for 20, 30, 40 minutes trying to get your brain to flip into art mode. It doesn't always work. Some days you should just put the brush down and maybe go draw, like copy paper's cheap. That's why I like clipboards and copy paper. It's cheap, and I have to get self-conscious about somebody looking through one of my sketchbooks. I hate that because I might do some really private drawings. I never know what mood I'm going to be in, or maybe half of them really suck, you know and yeah, I do terrible drawings all the time, and I do wonderful drawings all the time. You just never know. So I prefer to keep clipboards with copy paper. That way I can just flip them in and out, and then I can custom tailor my sketchbook to make it look like I'm a real badass. Not that I really show off my sketches all that much. I really don't. But I do fairly, depends what headspace I'm in. But I'll go through periods where I draw a lot and other periods where I just paint a lot. Where I won't draw for months and I'll just paint, like, because I don't really draw my paintings out before I work on them. I don't like plan them out too much. I more see it in my mind, and then just go for it. And this is my pencil right here. That's why I see it. I feel like I'm just drawing with paint. At 30 mark, I've got 30 minutes to get to work, so probably does for. I think I just said 15 minutes about 5 minutes ago, but we'll see what we can do. Yeah, we'll use our time the best we can. I'm really happy to be doing this. I've been wanting to for, like I said, the last week and a half or so. It just occurred to me one morning. I'm like, I pretty much paint, like, I would say half the time before I go to work, for a little bit, kind of finding myself with a fresh mind in the morning, fresh eyes. Yeah, I'm going to go into this background eventually. I was just trying to kind of indicate what I'm going to do here, but I'm going to come in, I'm going to lay in some rough trees on this horizon, and I'm going to spotty them. I'm going to make them a little, it's like where you see Bob Ross coming in here and tapping shit. And that's basically all I'm doing, same thing. I might go and refine a lot more than he might, but probably not. Who knows? We'll see. This tree is starting to look a little flat. I don't think I put any medium into this yet. In fact, I can get to the side and tell you where the medium is because I can see where all the shiny areas are versus all the flat sunken areas. And in fact, I might just take this McGlip and thin it out heavily with thinner and use it kind of like a pre-varnish. I was thinking about that last night and just even this thing out and then go back into it. And this started as an intentional underpainting. I don't know how much color I'm going to put into this. I still don't. I keep thinking about it. I'm afraid to get too crazy with color because it would be easy. And in fact, then maybe the next session I'll show you a piece that started this way. Very similar in the sense that it was underpainted in gray, and I forget what it's referred to. It's not Grisalli. It's when you do it in gray, it's called something else. And it's slipping my mind right now, which is horrible since I know this stuff like the back of my hand. But hey, I forget my own name sometimes. So, yeah. But I have another piece that it looks very photographic. Like it looks like a photograph. I've had a lot of people say that when they look at it. I could go grab it right now. It's sitting in the other room. It's old. It's a painting from 2014, but it was done this way. It was painted all in gray, and then I went in and colorized it in layers of very thin glazes of color that I just built up. And it's a hell of a cool effect. I mean, it really, really, really looks amazing. And I do the same thing with my Flemish work, which is pretty much the same thing. Just I lean more towards umber in my color scheme usually when I'm doing more Flemishy work. If I want true color, then I'll make it a little bit more monotone gray, because the gray kind of reflects the original color of whatever glaze you're going to throw on it better than say like an umber. An umber is going to, of course, shift it towards the red. So this piece started off umber. In fact, like this whole thing was, and you can see just a tiny scant bit of evidence of that right here. I keep going into this, so it's disappearing slowly. It's going by day as I work on this. But yeah, this whole area right here, uh, yeah, is the last evidence of the fact that this. And you can see a little bit of it through here in little areas. It's showing through a little bit, and it's pulling the image forward in those areas against this gray. And that was my intent, you know. I like starting with umber and then graying it out. It's very Flemish. Look up Flemish technique or the undead technique or the 7-layer technique or whatever you want to call it. There's so many names for it, but there's plenty of videos on YouTube. There's all kinds of great artists, especially Russian artists who train, who have channels dedicated to it. That technique, and if you really want to get hyper technical with oil painting, it's a really good thing to learn. And it's something I've gotten really good at, is doing Flemish, but I just use it as kind of a tool in my toolbox to accomplish what I want to do more loose, because that can be a really rigid way of painting, and I don't want to be rigid anymore. I'm sick and tired of being rigid. A lot of my old paintings are really rigid, and in fact, one of my greatest paintings I've ever done is called Apathy and Ecstasy, and there's a really bad photo of it on my. It's blurry. I'm gonna have it reshot soon, but it's on my website, samuelfoot.com. Look for it. If I have it titled, I haven't finished my website yet, so some of my paintings are untitled, but it's this kind of androgynous, meaning sexless character that's obese sitting in a restaurant, like an endless restaurant. Like, it goes on forever. It's hard to explain. If you see the painting, you'll understand what I mean by that. And yeah, it's a very philosophical piece to me. But my point is, that's probably the best painting I've ever done technically. And I'm going to have to beat it soon. I'm going to have to do another technical piece that's better. And I don't want to, but I'm going to have to, because I'm trading that painting to a very a good artist friend of mine, who's a renowned tattoo artist, a known one, and he's going to finish this arm for me because he's got a few sessions on it. And another artist had previously started, or had started this piece, but he continued it, and it's going up to about here so far. That's, yeah, you can see it. Anyway, and it bugs me. This is where the camera is angled, and I see this unfinished art on me, and it's one thing to have an unfinished painting. I have plenty of those, even though I do finish a fair swath of my work. Like, anything that really matters to me, I finish, and that's been hundreds of paintings. So you know, I'm good at finishing stuff, but not always. I mean, sometimes it's not worth wasting the time on something that isn't worth wasting the time on. I mean, you only have so much time, so pick and choose your battles, as they say. But so I'm trading this painting, which is dear and near to my heart. I would never normally. It wasn't even for sale. Like, I wouldn't even consider selling that piece. But I had it hanging in that tattoo shop. And I used to work there. I was an employee there, so I had it hanging in there for years, and it was hanging over uh, his workstation. Funny enough, which is weird because, you know, most artists, they just want their own art in their own art station. But I had already had it there, and he moved into that section. But he liked it. He liked that painting a lot. In fact, there's paintings of his that I really, 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 really covet too. He's a truly great artist, and his name's Kenny. So shout outs to Kenny. But uh, yeah, the kid, and he's much younger than me. He's like mid-20s, but he's easily, in my opinion, one of the best tattoo artists in the world. He's gonna barter. He when I went to collect my art, it was several months ago. I decided I wanted my art back. I wanted back my house. I wanted to look at it. I wanted to torture myself with it, because otherwise I would have to go to that tattoo studio, and I don't work there anymore. So I should explain. So I wanted to have my old, very sentimental. It's all the core work that I never have wanted to sell. Let's put it that way. It's stuff that I care about so much. I wouldn't sell it. I wouldn't even consider selling it. So I went and grabbed that work, and when I was grabbing that piece, he was working on a client, and he looks up at me and he says, "No, you're not allowed to take that." I'm like, what? He's like, that painting is permanently affixed to this wall because he's always wanted this painting. And I'm like, well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to take the painting, but I'll trade it to you for you finishing this tattoo because he was going to do it for free anyway. We're buddies, and it's thousands of dollars left of work to do on this thing, thousands. He charges $250 an hour needle time, so yeah, I mean, it's not, he's not. It's not cheap work. It's expensive work, He's worth it 100%. But he was going to do it for me for free. And I'm like, I kind of felt bad about it. And we were having this conversation, and he's talking about that painting. He wanted it. And he's always wanted it. He's always asked me for it. And he's like, straight up, how much do you want for it? And I'm like, I'll tell you what. You do this tattoo for me, and I'll trade you the painting for it. And he's like, no way, really? And I'm like, yeah, sure, why not? So that's our current deal. We're going to barter it. And I love that. I've done that many times, actually. I've bartered my work with other artists and for their work. Unfortunately, one time I traded for a glass sculpture that I broke later. Oh man, that really sucked. I was so bad about it. I was so mad about it. I'm still mad about it a little bit. I mean, you have to get over it, but it was a really beautiful glass piece, and I traded a really cool painting for it, and yeah, I totally wrecked it. I just backhanded it. Yeah, and there we are. So I have some little scratches in here, and that was because I took my one of my favorite painting tools of all time, my scalpel. This is a titanium receiver for this. You can find these on eBay. It's by EDC Fans. Look it up. You get several blades, like 13 blades or something. Lucky 13. But I think you get like 10 or 13 blades with it for free. And then for like another 100 blades, it's like $10. So you have like a lifetime supply, basically, of blades. But here's how cool this thing is. You can just switch the blades in and out of this thing. Gosh, like I've gotten really good at it. So you snap one of these suckers, whatever, you need a new blade, whatever. But look at the shape of it. And you can put 3 different very standard scalpel shaped blades on here, and they all vary quite a bit. This is the one I prefer right now because it pushes this edge out. So when I go down and I'm scraping, and that's what I was doing. So like I have these flat ones as well for working bigger areas, and I just round the corners off so I don't dig into my canvas because you're working in a swimming pool basically. This is a flexible surface. And so these edges will catch and scratch holes in your work if you don't take the edges off of these. And then I just keep them on magnets. And I keep this one on a magnet as well. Even the titanium isn't, but the pin in here is steel, so I can stick it to a magnet. Anyway, and then I keep it on a keychain because I have a Mac receiver on this and on my keys if I want to take it with me somewhere. But this is one of my favorite painting tools. I coveted one of these for like 10 years. I thought it would be a great painting tool. And I got it recently, like a year ago or so, maybe less than a year ago, and it totally met my expectations. It was everything in my mind I could see it being. And I use that quite a bit, like for shaping my brush strokes. And so like I had these raised brushstrokes in these dark areas, and that's just bad juju unless you want it to reflect light in the dark areas. Some artists are cool with that. Odd Nerdrum, for example, a truly, in my opinion, master great artist. I believe he's still alive, but he's probably, in my opinion, one of the greatest living artists, easily, and one of the greatest artists of all time, in my opinion. Odd Nerdrum's a god. I would love to go hang out with that guy. He's Norwegian, brilliant guy. And generally a portrait artist. And I'm a little rusty with my left hand. I haven't painted left-handed in a couple weeks. Anyway, so yeah, but Odd Nerdrum often builds up little thick areas in his darks. I don't know if he does it intentionally, but it really shows up in the photographs. You'll see it in photographs in his books where, like, in the darks, you'll see like all these little white speckles. I hate that. It drives me crazy. Those white speckles are the shininess of the oil paint over those because it's a 3-dimensional object. And I have it in here. You kind of hear it. I've got some heavy black built up. And the reason I did that wasn't by intent. It was because I was trying to get rid of the sinking. So I was trying to just build my blacks up so thick that they would quit sinking in. That didn't work, by the way. So I ended up with these big ridges of dark oil paint in here. And there's one right there. In fact, big ridge right there, big ridge right here. Now, if those start to bug me, then what I can do is just go in there with my X-Acto, not X-Acto, my scalpel, and carve it off. And there we go. I'm just drawing over it very lightly, and this thing is way sharper than a razor blade. I mean, this is literally meant for surgery. And it's crazy how sharp this thing is. It's nuts. So yeah, I just did it. I took that edge down. It's gone, and I didn't scrape into the white too much, so I can just rub this. This black is still wet. So there it goes. Disappeared. Gone. Now that won't pop light anymore. And it's popping light. I can see every time I get to an angle, I can see all these dark areas where it's catching light. So that bugs me. So I have to come back and fix this. I was just trying to, and that failed because I'm not really paying attention to what I'm doing. Yeah, it's a little better. But I'll come back in here with a little heavier paint, probably a little bit more opaque, and fix all that. But yeah, so I totally changed this road, and I always emphasize this: never be afraid to just destroy. It doesn't matter if you spent 300 hours in a little tiny area. If it doesn't work, then it doesn't work. It sucks, but you have to fucking like buck up and just kill it, destroy it, get loose with it. Like that's what I do. Fuck. Anyway, so like yeah, this character, all these characters, I just got pretty loose with him. I like him already a lot more. Just broke it up. It was starting to get way too rigid. There were certain things. I don't know if I even want to put eyes in these characters. It was like kind of something like well, I don't like to put the pupils in my dark characters, so I would have left them white or dark sockets anyway, probably. But it's something like Giger used to do, with the alien creature, the xenomorph, as it became known eventually. He would see. Yeah, I'm gonna have to cut this here pretty quick. So he would, I'll cut it in the next minute or so. He would leave the eyes out. He thought it was a lot scarier, and I think he was right. Leave the eyes out. Now this side is gonna catch more light. Well, that isn't very light, is it? Well, anyway, I'm gonna have to cut the stream. I have to throw. Well, I have my shoes on, but I have to grab my stuff and run out the door. Got a low day today, which means I'm gonna be moving probably like 3-4 tons of freaking shit. I'm real excited about. I don't really think about it too much though. It doesn't bother me. I just my arthritis bothers me. And yeah, I do want to my job. As far as jobs are concerned, I've said this before, I actually kind of like my job. Even though I'd much prefer to just be doing this full time. I mean, of course. And I have been a painter full time. It's just, it can get rough with paying bills sometimes. You need a regular paycheck, and selling paintings isn't always the most reliable thing. Not until I build up my peripheral income more. So, meaning prints and things of that nature, which I have totally let go by the wayside. I'm rebuilding my art business from scratch lately because I've spent the last several years just working my ass off, doing a number of professions, trying to get ahead. And kind of let my art, like I'm always painting in the background, always, but I haven't been doing nearly as many shows as I used to and whatnot, and I'm trying to change all that. And by doing this channel and by forcing myself to constantly perform, not even forcing, I want to do it, it's fun for me, I hope to get a lot more brush time and build up my inventory a lot more for the summer because I want to do some shows. I already have one set up, but I have to set time for it. And start doing a lot more shows, sending galleries some pieces maybe, and yeah, selling some more art. And also I have a major piece I have finished I have to collect on. I have to contact the client. It's been done for months, and I just have to be like, hey, you still want this? So, it's been fun, guys. I'm going to do this for you again real soon. I'm glad I hadn't done a video in, I guess, apparently 2 weeks. So, yeah, we'll be back at it. Now that I can, I just got up an hour early today. I'm usually up before my alarm anyway. So, in either case, I'm going to be back real soon. And eventually we'll set a schedule for this stuff so I can turn this into a job and I have to be in front of this camera at such and such a time, just like showing up at work. That's the way it has to be. You have to do that sometimes. You have to set certain goals, and I'm going to. I'm limping into this again, and yeah. And I'm actually sober this time. The last 2 streams I did was a little toasty, not like drunk or anything, but just buzzed, and I hated it. Watching them, entertaining but stupid. I'm stupid, and when I'm that way, I make a lot more mistakes. I say a lot more stupid crap. But in either case, till next time, see you on the other side, and make a beautiful day.